Hill to Wall Street. This is Politics and Profits with your host, Rick Amato.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick Amato. It's time for Politics and Profits.
We follow the trends on Capitol Hill that lead to the profits on Wall Street. We expose the hard facts of what your elected officials are doing when you're not looking. And we show you how you can profit from their politics. The American dream is alive and well, and you can be proud to call America your home. And now, it's Rick Amato.
Welcome to Politics and Profits, everyone. Well, as we all know, and as we have often said on this show, we're living during a very difficult time, the pandemic environment, creating a lot of stress in the personal lives, the business lives, and the financial lives of a lot of people. Joining me this time from outside of Seattle is a leading coach, if you will, a coach on how to overcome one's obstacles in one's life. What makes this individual very unique, ladies and gentlemen, is well, he's not just a coach, not that there is such thing as just a coach. You know, he's not just a life coach. He is someone who's walked the walk, not just talked the talk. He is a former member of the Mafia. As a young man, he was recruited and enrolled with the Mafia and trained as a card shark. We'll talk about how it is that he became a part of the Mafia, what he did as a card shark, and how that led to him today leaving the Mafia and training others on how to overcome life's obstacles. Let's welcome Brian Arnold from outside of Seattle. Brian, good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
It's an intriguing, fascinating story. Tell our viewers how it is, how old you were, and what led to the circumstances to you joining the Mafia.
Well, I was just a young man. I left home at 16 years of age and went out into the world to find myself, I guess, and worked on the oil rigs. And I ended up one night at a party, and a couple of fellows came out and wanted me to join them in a game in the back room because they had a couple of millionaires in there in the back room, and they had a big game going on. And when I talk about big games with these guys, we're talking 50,000, 100,000, some nights $500,000. So they were very significant games. And they just kind of wanted me to sit in on a game and just be a stall guy where they took all the money and then dumped it onto me. And I, being the innocent young kid that I was, won all the money. And then afterwards I had to give it all to them, and they just gave me $500 for sitting in the game. And that's how it started. And then they wanted to keep me around, and eventually it led to being connected into the Mafia, because they were connected to that.
Was this
kind of how I started?
Where was this? Las Vegas or?
Well, it was all over the country. I can't name cities in particular, but I mean, this is 45 years ago now. So I could, but it was all over the place. It wasn't really Vegas at all. We flew around in Learjets. They flew us all over the place, and we stayed in 5-star resort hotels and limos and first class everything. And but it could have been New York, Chicago, LA, all over the place, up into Alaska and all over.
So
wherever the games were.
You explained your first experience, how you sat there and they did everything and gave you the money, then you gave it back. What did that lead to?
Well, that led to me wanting to know more, and then they wouldn't turn me out. They wouldn't teach me anything. I ended up becoming nicknamed the Kid because I was just a kid. I was 19. And these guys were older, sophisticated, well-groomed, business-type people. You would never suspect anything with these guys. And finally, I threatened one of them one night, and the guy finally showed me a little bit of how they did what they did. And from there, I started to practice 8, 10, 12 hours a day on my art of doing one good move. And it's like Bruce Lee said, I'm not concerned about one person who can do 10,000 moves. I'm concerned about one person who has practiced one move 10,000 times.
That's what Michael Jordan said. Work on your strength, not your weakness.
Yeah, well, there was just one move and or two moves that needed to be done, and I practiced them 8, 10, 12 hours a day for a year until it was so good I couldn't see myself taking cards out of the deck from wherever I wanted. I couldn't even see it. So it's impossible. The hand is quicker than the eye.
I have
That's why there's so many black eyes.
I have to ask. So, well, I'm sorry. What did you say about black eyes? I'm sorry.
I said the hand is quicker than the eye. That's why there's so many black eyes.
All right. I have to ask. So you learned, you practiced 8, 10. What did that lead for you financially doing?
Well, it ended up that when we did go in and play for if we were called in on a special game by somebody, we would go in and take the game off, and if there was a $500,000, they got 250,000, we got 250,000, and split it three ways.
You got how?
So I ended up getting a third after, instead of just $500. I was now pulling my own weight, and I was in. But that's kind of where it led to. And then by the age of 24, I had done everything that a young man in 4.5 years could have ever imagined doing. And I started to fall into depression. And of course, with that lifestyle comes all the drugs and the wine, woman, and song. And it takes you down the road to despair eventually because there's nothing left to do.
Okay, Brian, we have a commercial break here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you what led to you leaving the Mafia. You probably just showed us a hint. And then how that launched what you're doing helping people today. We're back with more with my guest, Brian Arnold, right after this. I continue with my guest, Brian Arnold. Brian, just before the break, you said that by age 24, wine, women, cars, money, it led to depression. How did that lead to depression and why?
Well, once you get all the money you want, and it's so easy to get it, and you can have millions of dollars in cash, like you start to wonder what else is there. And of course, me just being a kid, and not having any guidance whatsoever, led to, if I would have had somebody guiding me, I would have been smart and invested in houses and homes and things like that. But I was just a wild kid that didn't know any better. And it started to lead me into depression. So I wanted to get out, and I hadn't gotten that deep in. I was always on the peripheral edges of the Mafia calling us in whenever they needed us. And they liked us coming in because they didn't have to hurt anybody or do anything to make big money like that. So it was an easy income for them. And I fell into depression, and I wanted to get out, but I didn't know how to get out of, not the Mafia, but get out of where I was at in my own life. I didn't like the man staring back from the glass. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was lost and empty inside. I had all this money, but nothing else. And so I bought my mother and father's farm with a couple thousand acres and 300 head of cattle and horses. And I figured that would be good. But still, I went into deeper depression and became suicidal.
Wow. All right, so this led to you leaving the Mafia, as you said, being on the peripheral. It was not a hard transition. What have
No.
you learned? Go ahead.
Well, for any young people out there or parents taking care of young people, the young people don't know where they're going. They're young. They don't know, and they haven't experienced anything yet. And you can very easily get off track. I figured making all this money being easy money, but you pay a very big price for it in the end. Like, somebody wants to deal in drugs, you want to deal in arms, you want to deal in anything that's negative like that, it's going to take you out. And it just about took me out. I was only seconds away from pulling the trigger, and I had bought now my home, everything that I had, my farm, horses, cattle, equipment, all paid for, cash, money. And yet depression was upon me. So money can't buy you out of depression. And that's where I just about ended my life. And I had a very powerful spiritual experience and I was instantaneously delivered from my own self-sabotage and self-destruction. And it was a spiritual experience that I readjusted my mental thinking.
Well, you've piqued our interest. What was that spiritual experience?
Well, I'm not a religious person, but I am a very spiritual person. But I accepted the Lord into my heart as my Savior and Lord, and I had never heard anything. Oh, well, I was raised in religion. I was Roman Catholic, and I was raised around, lots of really nice, good people who went to church every Sunday, but I never had a personal experience with Christ. And it's kind of like, a lot of people know Elvis Presley, but they didn't know him personally. He was a famous person, but if you don't shake his hand and meet him and be in his home, well, for me, everybody was talking about the Lord and going to church and being religious, but I never had that experience of personally meeting him. And when I did, I invited Christ into my life, and I had a dramatic, instant deliverance. And I just took the cards and the gun and everything else in my life, and I threw it in the garbage. And I've never gone back now in 45 years. I've been free. And freedom comes, we all want freedom, but freedom really comes on the inside. It starts on the inside and works outward. People who are in prisons can be free inside even though they're imprisoned outwardly when they come to know the Lord, because it's an inward work. And when people have a mental breakdown or a nervous or emotional breakdown, it's because they don't know who their maker is, their creator is. They don't know who they themselves are. And until you know that, you can have all the mental gymnastics and meditation, but meditation of your mind won't save your soul. You need to have a personal experience. And when that happens, you become free inside. And that's what saved me and delivered me. And that's why I can help people today doing what I do.
Your website is kingdomproblemsolvers.com. We're showing it across the screen. Brian, we're down in less than a minute. What advice might you have for those who say, wait a minute, this guy, I've asked for Jesus to come into my life. I've asked for him to show himself to me. It's never happened. I don't know what this guy's on. What do you say to those people?
Well, what I would say is maybe you're not as desperate as I was. I was desperate. I was seconds away. I was like, I could go and pull the trigger on myself anytime. I was desperate. I was serious. I was asking, seeking, and knocking. I just wanted to know, what's life? Where do I go from here? Is this all there is? And I was desperate. And out of my despair, when you're on the bottom of the barrel, or actually I was underneath the barrel was on top of me. I had no hope whatsoever. And in such despair, I reached out, and he reached out and touched me too. And, that's where it's at. You got to be serious. I'm serious. I've never gone back in 45 years. I've never picked the cards up. Well, I turned my mess into a message now. And my mess was cards. Now I use cards to help other people get out by putting messages on my cards. So you can still play cards, but not gamble. It'll destroy your life.
Gone from the Mafia to Jesus, and you're helping other people who need your assistance, your support, showing them how they can do it. Brian Arnold, an amazing story. And we'll bring you back. We'd like to hear more from you in the future, especially your advice on specific advice for people undergoing difficulties in their life. Again, the website is kingdomproblemsolvers.com. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it very much.
Back after this.
Politics and Profits with Rick Amato is brought to you by Liberatory Accounting, the IRS problem solvers. To find out how Liberatory Accounting can help you, call 877-6-SOLVER. That's 877-6-SOLVER.